So thanks very much again, Martinez and Nicholas. And thank you all for being here. Very excited to be here today and to spend time during these 4 days of presentations. And I'm flattered to be, the one opening the first presentation. So I'm going to talk a bit about Satellogic. Satellogic is an Earth observation vertically integrated company. We look at the Earth from space, and we do it with our own fleet of satellites. And I want to discuss a bit how our imagery, improves decision-making across a variety of industries, and how we can contribute with our images and related services to democratizing the access to space data for the whole world. So I hope you're all seeing my screen. We are creating what we like to call a searchable Earth. Satellogic does only high resolution imagery. I'm going to talk a bit about the satellites in a couple of slides, but we are focusing in getting a live picture of everything that happens on Earth on a daily basis. Okay, so we're in the road to that. We are using, and our clients are using our imagery for a multiplicity of different industry uses, agricultural, forestry, insurance, energy. There's more and more adoption, especially on the private sector. We still have this industry still has a lot of governmental sector focusing on what could be done with imagery, but we're seeing more and more adoption of the private sector as well. This is where we are. Okay, Satellogic was founded 13 years ago. We are based and have offices in all these places that you see here. We have also a number of employees working remotely from many different locations all around the world. But basically, our company is of Argentinian descent. We were founded in Argentina, and we retain there most of the engineering and mission operations talent. We're about 400 overall, about 200 are based in Argentina. And these guys in those teams are the ones who are behind the design and the creation of every new generation of satellites that we launch. Then we have two integration plants. One that we call the pilot plant is in Montevideo, Uruguay, in a free zone where we really can drive the costs of our satellites low because we virtually pay no taxes there. And we have what we call a high throughput plant that we are building and should be ready sometime next year. In Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. Then we have our C-suite, and today we're headquartered pretty much in Spain, where we have our product delivery team. These are the guys who, after a satellite has captured an image, they do something with it, they transform it into something that is deliverable to a client. And last but not least, and I'm here in the US, most of our finance and sales team are spread out in different locations in the US. Again, because we learned from the pandemic, and we had that mode of working in the past too. We have a lot more people spread out around in about I would say 10, 15 more countries and cities. But these are the places where Satellogic has an actual firm and office. So our constellation today, and how many satellites we launched. So we have the largest sub-meter constellation in the world. We don't do any mid-resolution or low-resolution satellites. We have launched 38 to date. We are using 30 operationally today, which give us the ability to revisit points of interest up to 7 times a day. This is particularly relevant whenever we are collaborating with the Disaster Charter of the United Nations or with NASA Disasters, not so much on commercial contracts, but whenever we need to help, whenever there's a fire, a flood, or an earthquake, a tsunami, something happening somewhere in the world that could benefit from space imagery to help boots on ground people work more effectively in more affected areas, then we provide imagery with this kind of pace, so 7 times a day in any point of interest in the planet. And then, to give another benchmark, we could remap, if we were to remap a large area, say of 5,000 square kilometers, we could do that as fast as in 3 days, okay? And again, all of this with high resolution imagery. We are launching somewhere between 12 and 15 more satellites during the rest of this year. We launched the previous 4 that we launched them in January. And we expect to scale our constellation up to 202 satellites that would give us the ability to look at the whole planet in high resolution every day, as I mentioned at the beginning. One thing that is important in the way that we drive our costs low, from our satellites and our imagery, and in turn we drive our prices low, is that we are very, very private and in how we manage our designs and our inventions. So we do not outsource any part of our satellite or our payloads. We of course procure components from the market, but we do not outsource the design of those components. So in line with that, we take care of our intellectual property very well, and this paid off, and I'm going to tell you why in a couple of slides. So to date, we have had 23 patents granted, half of which roughly are in the US, the other half distributed between Europe, Israel, and Japan. We have another 46 pending applications that we hope get to the granting stage soon, and we have around 20-30 inventions that will then undergo the patenting process. Again, this allows us to buy components rather than designs and drive the cost of our satellites very, very low. So this is a bit of how the satellites look like. If you were to look at them from below, okay, they look like this. They're about the size of a chair, to give you an idea of size. They're micro satellites. They're about 90 centimeters high times 50 centimeters times 50 centimeters. Our main payload and the star of the satellite, and the one that's been awarded, and I'm going to tell you about that in a couple of slides, is our multispectral camera here. We're doing 70 centimeter resolution imagery with it right now. We're moving into 50 centimeters probably by the end of the year, and going down the way up to 30 centimeters in future editions of our satellites. We have had several generations going on. I'm going to tell you a bit of of our launch history and different generations that we had to date. And we have some hard specs. The mass of the satellites is about around 40 kilograms. We orbit in sun-synchronic orbits and low Earth orbits at 475 kilometers on average. And this is important. The lifetime of our satellites is only 3 to 4 years. We do not intend to have our technology in orbit last longer than technology on Earth lasts today. What I mean to say is, you don't have your computer or your cell phone with you for more than 3 to 4 years because it becomes obsolete after that. Well, that's the kind of pace that we want to have with our technology in orbit. And we can do that because our costs are really low. So we do not have to really make up for a huge investment and have satellites orbiting, like in the traditional industry, maybe 10, 15, 20 years. So that allows us to replenish old satellites with new ones all the time, and to be able to, to have the latest technology in orbit at every time. Going to the next one, and I promised I would show you a timeline of how our satellites and generations evolved. So these are the 13 launches that we had to date from 10 years ago, from 2013 to today. At first, we started doing, CubeSat standard satellites. We were learning, from an existing standard. Then we moved into this sort of hybrid here, and then we moved to this architecture of microsatellites that we kept up until today, even though, and again, every generation here, if you see here, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, etc., has been always better than the previous one. And we've improved everything, in the bus and the optics and in many aspects of the satellite. And all launches to date have been successful. All rockets made it to destiny. All orbital injections were successful. So we cross fingers that will remain the case. We have been launching with SpaceX since 2021. We have made this public. We have a multiple launch agreement in place, and we renewed it the last time in May last year, where we agreed to 68 more satellites to be launched with them, point forward. And one thing that I didn't mention, but you will notice here on the slide, we name our satellites. Okay, we are sort of that is sort of a tradition that we have been doing for a while. The first names of the satellites were very Argentinian, so you don't have to, if you don't know what these refer to, that's fine. If you do, thank you very much. But as of February 2018, we started naming our satellites after women in science or women in STEM. So the names that you see here, so Ada here is Ada Lovelace, Mariam is Mariam Mirzakhani, this is Sophie Germain, this is Marie Curie. In 2022, we started naming them name and surname because, some names were overlapping, so no more mystery now. But again, we intend to stay with this naming satellites after women in science for at least the next 100 satellites. I myself had a motion, inside the company that we should start doing women in rock and roll, and I'm still fighting for it. But for now, it's going to be women in science, and we'll see how my motion goes in future years. So I wanted to give a brief, comment on these 4 satellites, the most recent ones that we launched in January. Especially because 2 of them, instead of being named after women in science, like Amelia Earhart and Wilhelmina Fleming here, they're named Albania 1 and Albania 2. And this is a contract that we signed with the country of Albania, where we gave them, amongst other things, we gave them naming rights on the satellites. They are doing they are using one of our offerings called the Constellation as a Service, which I'm going to talk a bit more further in the presentation. But basically, we did joint PR on this, so it can be said. And this is a service that we started doing for them end of last year. And it basically, roughly speaking, it means that they are using our satellites and being able to operate the payloads of our satellites while the satellites are going above their country. And they're only paying for that time and as a service mode instead of procuring or buying a satellite. I'll get more in detail in a couple of slides. So actually not in a couple of slides, in this one. So this is basically what we do. These are the offerings and the main services that we put out there in the market. And I'm going to give some examples of how, how decision making is actually achieved with this and what we're doing for different clients. But basically we have like these 3 different families of offerings. The first one is basically imagery. Okay, we are providing satellite imagery to clients in all continents in the world, in many countries, in many private companies, as well as in many governments and governmental agencies. And these 2 are more oriented to the government sector. Constellation as a Service that I was just mentioning as an example in the contract that we did with Albania. We also signed a letter of intent with the Republic of Mexico recently, where we will be, we are intending to do this kind of service with them. And I cannot say a lot more, but it's out there also in a letter of intent that was publicly published, so I can say it. But we have, of course, other countries and clients that not all of them are public in the sense that we don't divulge every deal that we do. But I can talk about Albania and Mexico because we agreed to tell it to the market. So Constellation as a Service again is, imagine having a fleet of satellites orbiting above a given area of interest, which typically is the territory of the client country, and the country having a local team trained by us, operating the payloads of the satellites and programming the captures with exclusivity of use of a certain amount of satellites over that country, only for the time that the satellite is orbiting above the country. And when each of those satellites, part of the constellation, leaves, say, the northern frontier of the country, we recoup control and use them for something else. And we cut, that is sort of an as a service way, and it's another, out of the box way of looking at the space industry, where we are providing them with a service that is much more effective in terms of cost and in terms of risk adversity. They have no responsibility on the satellite launcher, on the satellite itself. If one satellite would fail, we would replace it with another. So it's giving, satellite capabilities to countries in a way that's ridiculously cost effective versus procuring or buying a single satellite. So imagine that, Albania or any of these countries, they only pay for that time most of the time. And to give you an idea of coverage, a given satellite in a polar orbit or even in a mid-inclination orbit is not procuring, is not flying over a given country pretty much more than 1-2% of its total lifetime, in a sense that it's covering much more of the world than it would be a given area. So this is really, really cost effective in a way that we only charge for the time that the satellite is orbiting above, the area of interest, which again is typically the frontiers and the territory of the given country, which is our client. And last but not least, and because we have had this request from several governments that, as much as this one is tremendously more effective in terms of cost, they want to have their own satellite constellation or their own satellites and being able to have full autonomy on a satellite. We also sell our satellites under this product that we call Space Systems. So we are discussing, we have we have been relentless to, and we tried not to sell our satellites for, for many, many years. But as of the fourth quarter last year, we decided to put this product, up within our offerings, and we're having a lot of satellite sale discussions with some countries in the world. Okay, so I said that our patents paid off in a way, and why did I say that? So aside from the fact that we have the highest revisit, in the market for high resolution, and we have the best cost in the market for high resolution, we also have imagery that has been awarded, several times because of its quality. Okay, and I want to mention this case in particular. This is this is an annual Olympics that the NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency of the United States, which is arguably, one of the, if not the most important Earth observation entity or authority in the world. They do these Olympics where, they give gold, silver, and bronze medals to different companies all around. And the last time that this event was held, the gold medal on multispectral imagery went to us, went to Satellogic. So in a way, it confirmed that we're in the right path, with the kind of technology that we build. And it makes total sense that we are privy of our intellectual property and that we keep our inventions patented and so on. So this was one of the awards that we got. We got another, something that was called a system characterization report on our multispectral sensor done by the USGS, comparing our sensor to others in the market. And, we came first in many dimensions of that comparison. All of this that I'm saying is public. It's on the internet. You can Google it and attest to what I'm saying here. But that report is, it's 60 pages long, and it's very, very thorough in how it describes, the benefits of our multispectral sensor. So going to uses and to how, companies and governments and some distributors and partners that we have in different places in the world make sense out of our imagery and use it to do better decisions. So these are examples here. I just chose to show, there's some screenshots here. And by the way, these are not the high resolution images. If you double click on these ones, they would redefine themselves, okay? This is just fitting 4 within the slide of a PowerPoint. But these are examples where we're seeing activity in ports or close to ports or container activity. We have a lot of clients in this kind of industry and practice. These are similar, but with planes. We do a lot of airport monitoring. By the way, I didn't mention it. I forgot to say this, but our multispectral camera also does 60-second video. So we're providing videos, especially when it's airport activity or highway activity. We can provide video with that sensor as well. But anyway, these are our airports mostly. The one on the top left is actually an airplane graveyard where the company that employs us are using these airplanes to cannibalize their parts and use them for the actual working fleet. So there's many different uses on the airspace activity as well. These here are more urban. They vary on their use. Cities are typically our clients here, or counties, where we're doing, from monitoring highways and looking with video at activity of cars moving, within a highway from point A to point B and estimating traffic with that, to monitoring green spaces within cities, to looking at urban sprawl, estimating census and, a number of people living in a given place, depending on the growth of infrastructure. This happens a lot in the outsides of cities. In some cases, we have a couple of contracts where the census and geography institutions of countries are looking at estimating urban sprawl by looking at new buildings with imagery of ours that are we provide imagery with a given time span, and they look at those changes to estimate how many new people have moved in the outsides of a given city. These here are more, they're more vast. These are typically bigger images, or where we compose images of several captures. Like I'd mentioned at the beginning, we could do, if we were given a 5,000 square kilometer area, we could do it, as fast as 3 days. These have to do with forestry, with national parks. The one down left is a mine in Botswana in Africa. So again, all of these are examples. We have many more. We have new challenges coming up to us every day, but really we are seeing that satellite imagery is adopted more and more by a variety of new industries and new uses. And it's, it's coming a bit off the hands of governments alone, and we see a lot of growth again in the private sector. So to give you an idea of where we stand and where we're going, so today we're here, okay, we're doing 70 centimeters. We expect to have around 40 functional satellites by the end of the year. I mentioned that we would be launching another 12 to 15, but we're also decommissioning others. As I mentioned before, the lifespan of the satellites is 3 to 4 years in purpose, so that new ones are replenishing old ones all the time. And this goes on, until we get to the 200. I said it was 202, the number that we need to do the daily world remaps in high resolution that we want to achieve. But then again, we won't stop there. They are to be, replaced with new ones, even when we get to that mark. And I mentioned that we had a roadmap down to 30 centimeters in terms of resolution. That's where we'll stop. And the reason we'll stop is because beyond that, that's military use of satellite imagery. Our company has a mandate and, a philosophy of imagery, it's only for civil use and for peaceful use. So we won't go further than 30 centimeters. And last but not least, we have been quoting on NASDAQ since January last year. So we've been a public company for more than a year now. So it's been a nice road. In 13 years, in year 12 we became a public company, and this is it's both very good because we have grown more in the past year than we had in the previous 11. But it's also more challenging, of course. We need to report and produce results for stockholders and for the market with more scrutiny than we were used to, but that's part of the game. So with that was my last slide. I'm seeing that there are some things on the chat here in Q&A. Let me see if there are questions for me. Yes, so let me read, please.
Yes,
or I don't know, so sorry, go ahead.
We do have Luciano. So thank you once again for the insightful presentation. I was watching the entire thing myself here as well. A few questions, as I said. So again, we have came through from the people. So Irina has asked a question. So how does Satellogic differentiates from other big players? So for example, like Planet, and do you offer any analytic capabilities for asset monitoring?
Excellent question. So first of all, we do have today the high, the bigger high resolution, okay, high resolution below 1 meter constellation in the world, okay, and our cost is, is lower on a price list, and we publish it publicly. It's in our website than any player in the planet. So that would be my first answer to the first part of the question. Second question, and that's a very good one. No, we don't. We don't do any analytics ourselves. When I joined Satellogic, I've been with Satellogic for 4 years. When I started working with Satellogic, and for a while we did, okay, we were concentrated in trying to do everything ourselves, to say so, where we were offering, not only the imagery or the data, but also the analytics layers where, we were offering, services on agriculture and on oil and gas and on forestry and other industries where we were doing the analytics ourselves. What we found is and this is a rough number, but it's real, there are about 1 million companies out there that can do analytics over imagery, whereas providing high resolution, high frequency, low cost imagery, that makes us absolutely unique. And we weren't unique in that other sense. And we're seeing that more and more our clients have their own analytics capabilities. And we also work with a lot of companies. We have around 50 or 60 resellers and distributors and partner companies that make sense out of our imagery out there. And there are specialized maybe on a certain industry niche or a certain industry market or geography segment. So it didn't make sense that we kept wanting to, to grab the whole thing and rather not concentrate in what makes us really, really stand out. So, so we're not doing any analytics capability. I'm sorry, you moderate the questions if you want to go on with the others. Yeah.
So another question that we have is from Thomas. So we have other questions popping up here too. So how do you do orbit? And right now with this situation of space debris, so the question from Thomas, how do you do orbit this satellite after 3-4 years of operational life?
Perfect. So we actually bring them, I didn't mention it here, and it can be seen a bit on the right side here. You see there's like a space here. It's not seen, but we have to actual butane tanks with their own propulsion on the satellites on the back of the satellite. So what we do is when it's approaching end of life, we drive it closer to Earth. The satellites are orbiting at 27,000 kilometers per hour. I'm sorry, yeah, about 8 kilometers per second. So very, very quickly. And the reason they have to go that quickly is because if not, the gravity of planet Earth would attract them, and and we need to go that fast to beat with the centrifuge force the gravity of the planet. So only by driving them a bit closer to Earth, they start decaying, and they enter what's called a decommissioning orbit, or an orbit where they in every turn they lose some height until they burn completely in the atmosphere, and they spend a lot of turns in the higher layer of the atmosphere before they pulverize completely. Okay, no single screw of the satellite gets to Earth. We have already decommissioned 8 of them, by the way. So we burn them in the atmosphere is the short answer.
And the question from myself here as well, because right now, as I see the map that you have here, I see the Turkey there is kind of on my eye as well. And we obviously did IEC 22 back in Turkey. And now going back to the recent challenges that Turkey is facing with the earthquake that happened just recently, and we have attendees currently watching from Turkey too. So the question for you, Luciano, is how can Earth observation data can be used to improve disaster response and preparedness? And what are some other key challenges in implementing this technology in emerging situations?
So I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we collaborated with 2 entities, especially on that, and we do that for free. Okay, this is not commercial. And those entities are the Disaster Charter, which is an entity that looks and helps with disasters all around the world, an entity that depends on the United Nations. And the other one, to a second extent, I would say, that we collaborate with is NASA Disasters, a division of NASA. What we do is they request imagery from us. By the way, we have captured imagery of Turkey. We have been capturing recently images of the fire in Chile. We have a lot of images in our catalog that have to do with disasters that happened anywhere in the world, and that is one of the cores of things that we do. And we are in a mission to help make a better planet with satellite imagery to the extent that we can. So we basically collaborate through those entities, and that information and those images are available both for those entities as for NGOs, for the affected countries, and so on. So we are very conscious of how we can help, with disasters anywhere on the planet. And Turkey, the things happening in Turkey these days are amongst the things that we have been, capturing images from in recent weeks and so on.
Got it. Perfect. So, Luciano, so that was a very insightful presentation from your side, obviously. So, innovative company, I mean, doing a lot of great things in this Earth observation industry as well. So for the people here, which obviously they see there is a link. So to find your contact details, like an email, obviously that's here in the chat, LinkedIn, that can reach out to you and set up a private discussion in terms of services and solutions that we provide. And obviously for the people that won't be here today, this is all recorded, which all these people will have access to the recordings of the sessions as well, and they can find those details of you there too. So, but for you and for your session, I want to say greatly thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining. I mean, pleasure to meet you, and obviously for after all these conversations, and hopefully we can catch up next year as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Martinez, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you.
And thank you, Nicholas. I'm sorry. Thank you. Bye-bye.